Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Vernon Brown. Vernon is one of the top happiness coaches in America who focuses on exploring the endless possibilities as to why entrepreneurs and executives feel stuck and unhappy. The key is many still live in the past. Vernon unlocks their destiny. Known on stage as the Energizer Connection speaker, Vernon uses his intuitive gift of empathy, charismatic personality, and his knowledge from his studies in psychology to set past emotions aside and leave audience members at the edge of their seats as they wait to implement his life-changing lessons. From cover model to personal trainer to CEO, Vernon is driven and uses his intuition to find customized regimes that work for his clients that in turn expand the nation. Vernon has been featured most recently on Entrepreneurial Grind, Cracking the Entrepreneur Code, and National Speaker Association Speaking Driven Business Podcast. Vernon Brown's work has touched the lives of thousands of executives to increase employee engagement, as well as entrepreneurs who have doubled their business beyond six figures and has helped save countless personal relationships in the process. While helping clients find and sustain their happiness, his biggest challenge is instilling these life lessons on his young son, Logan. Vernon strives to create change and fulfillment from within that can truly be spread generational, no longer allowing others to feel as he did at a very young age as an outcast. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Vernon. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
I appreciate you reading all that. And I really do appreciate you, connecting with me, having such a great call, talking before this and having me here. Yeah, it's great.
So I talk a lot, and most people, like I've been on podcasts or I listen to other podcasts, people always talk about, well, tell me some of your back end, your backstory. Well, guess what? That's not personal enough to me. I'm a huge fan of Marvel and Star Wars. Well, you think about Marvel and Star Wars, where do they start? They start in the middle all the time, and then they dial it back later on to the origin. Doesn't make sense to me. Why not start at the origin and build it up? And that's because a lot of times, though, people's origins really, they don't think that people will be excited about it. But for me, the origin is where everything starts, where your journey to where you are today is so important, and it's not delved into enough, in my opinion. So tell me your origin story and what key things from your childhood to adulthood that led you to where you're at currently.
This, everything you said about origin story, it is important. I think always let clients, audiences know this, like what a person's looks like is not what they've been through. Oftentimes you will look at someone and assume, oh, they've had a cushy life or they had this type of life, So origin stories are important. For myself, it was a family of, single mother. I'm one of three. I'm the middle child. My sister's 2 years older. My brother's 9 years younger. And when we were growing up, it was, to say we were poor is not even good enough. Like we had the kerosene heat. I don't know if you remember those and we had the pot on top to heat the water up. And that's how we heat our water to take a bath. We would have sheets up just to make sure the house could stay warm wherever the kerosene heater is in. We didn't want the heat to get out. We were just poor. We had just, some of that was, regardless, growing up poor really did some things to my brain, which I will get into in a minute. But I got made fun of a lot because, just like yourself, I'm a big nerd. I love Marvel. I say nerd in such the most endearing way because I think nerds are awesome, by the way. You got a Spider-Man mug right behind me. My son's Logan. He's named after Wolverine. Like, I am a nerd and I love it. I think we are such a great group of people. But, when you're reading medical journals when you're a kid, when you're reading comic books when you're a kid, girls just love that, right? So I was not hitting off with the ladies at all. Granted, me like fifth or sixth grade, right? But I never cared about how I looked, right? Because, you couldn't afford to get a haircut. So you just learn to kind of make do with how you look. But, had a couple things happen to me that kind of put me into this very guarded state. I think one of the big ones that stands out to me was someone trying to kidnap me when I was 8. That bothered me. That really bothered me. Even to this day, I don't say it bothers me, but it has a certain level of awareness, right? Like, you will never see pictures of my son online. Never. You'll hear about him, but you won't see pictures. And the reason that is, like, when I was 8, there was no social media, right? If you had to call someone, it was a rotary phone. And like, for a rotary phone, for people who might not remember, if somebody had like a 9 in their number, you would get mad because you got to, it's got to go all the way back. Now it takes 5 minutes, to call somebody, right? But the fact that someone was able to figure out that my mom wasn't home and when my bus got there and was waiting for me at the end of the driveway in the dark, a little black boy in an all white neighborhood, like no. And that bothered me. And then, being evicted a couple of times really stuck with me. The eviction process, I understand it, entirely. You can't pay your bill. You're not paying the bill. It's when you're on the bus and you see, mentioned I was a nerd. I love to draw as well. Another awesome nerd quality. But when you're on the bus and all of a sudden you see things floating in the air and you're like, that looks like my artwork. And then your bus drops you off and all of your clothes, all your belongings, your underwear, your shoes, your socks, your pots, your pants are there. And everybody sees that. That sticks with you, you know what I mean? And I was at that age when your social circle mattered. I know a lot of people say, well, it doesn't matter. But when you're 10, well, no, excuse me, when you're 14 years old, your social circle matters. And fortunately, my grandmother, and God rest her soul, she took us in, all 3 of us. And that's when life really, started to take a hold of me the way that I wanted it to take a hold. And, a big reason for me loving comic books is you mentioned about the stories. Like, you'll hear about the X-Men, you hear about Spider-Man. Well, more specifically, like the X-Men, they were mutants, but they had these super cool powers, right? But after you kept reading a comic, like, man, they can do this, they can do that, all of a sudden they have their origin story. And you see the crap that they went through. You see the abuse, you see the drugs, and then like, you see the rapes, you see all those things. And I can relate to all of those. And so for me, it's like my superpower has to come. It has to come because I'm going through a lot of crap right now, God, that's not making any sense, but I know you got something better for me. And, once, my grandmother really, and we were talking about budgeting, taught me so much about personal care, like things like making sure you get your haircut, making sure you brush your teeth. Yes, I was 15, 16 years old, but guess what? I didn't have it at that time. I didn't have someone to go and, really, kind of let me know what to do with life and how to, better take care of myself. I'm not picking on anybody for that, but it's just, I didn't have it. Who cares? But now I do. Life just started just to really take a form the way I realized that God has a sense of humor, because all of a sudden, I'm starting to get things together, and ladies still aren't paying me any attention. Don't get me wrong, but I smelled better. I looked better. I felt better. People fortunately, go to different schools. They forget about the evictions, and all of a sudden you turn 18 years old, you graduate high school, you're 5'10", and then a year later, you're walking around in high waters because you're 6'4". And you're like, how the heck did I hit my growth spurt that late in life? I had baby teeth when I was 16 years old. Like, I just was a late bloomer. And once, I kind of got used to being that person that I am today, in terms of just like height and just, the kind of presence that I have. it was just amazing. I recognized I had the gift of long suffering. That was my superpower. It's my intuition. I thought it was so simple when you could look at someone. We were talking about this. You could just look at someone and see what's going on. And it's not that you're, reading their minds. It's not that you think that I'm better than anybody, but I could just see what's happening. And so I became a bartender, and I figured, what's the fastest way I can get utilize this and really pull myself out of a shell? Because I was kind of really quiet. And that's when I really noticed intuition, because now I got paid for my intuition and my sense of humor, basically, because nobody cares how long it takes to make a drink. Like nobody cares. If you can make someone laugh and let them know that they feel felt and someone's paying attention to them, boom, because that's what people are wanting. And I mean, I did a great job there. Had a really good, for lack of a better phrase, I want to say career, because I made so much money. It was ridiculous how much money I made bartending. Ridiculous. Like I was just blown away. But after I got done with that, I decided I wanted to do something that challenged a lot of the beliefs that I had when I was younger. I thought it was the fat, stupid, ugly one is what I was always told. I'd never be successful. I mean, I was told this over and over again when I was a little baby, little kid, as far as I can remember. And, I had a really good friend at the time who said, you really should consider getting into acting and modeling. And I said, absolutely not. But fortunately, I listened to what he had to say, and I shot some pictures in Richmond, sent them up to New York, and I was like, okay, let's see what happens. I sent it out to 16 agencies, and 15 of them said no, and one said yes. And a big belief that I have is all I need is an opportunity. I don't care how low chance of success it's going to be there. Give me an opportunity, right? And so my family, again, going against the grain, I'm big on pushing, back on what you believe to be true versus what the reality is. Like my family's like, you don't leave Richmond. If you do anything, you go together. We don't fly on planes. It's just a different way of thinking, right? And so my dad, and I remember when he drove me to the airport, he's like, you're getting on a plane? I'm like, yes. And he heard the chance that it was a success. 15 said no, one said yes. Why are you doing this? It's dumb. And I'll never forget it. It was the most emotional and awkwardly emotional moment all at the same time. My dad shook my hand and just said, good luck, son. Like he just like thought I was going to die on a plane. He really did. But as the story goes, I kept stopped off that plane on the Wednesday or Thursday, and I got back to Richmond that Monday. And the next thing you know, I was booking jobs, Under Armour. And then I started getting covers, and I started getting some acting jobs. And I had a great time with that. And it's, the big thing that really led to me kind of stopping doing that for about 2 years, 3 years was I'm not that guy who wants to get all the attention. I'm more, and this sounds super corny to say, but when you grow up and you don't have whatever attractive feature people might value, like you recognize your mind and the conversations that you have are more important than anything. A big phrase that I have is how attractive are you when the lights are off? How beautiful are you when the lights are off? Because I saw a lot of beautiful people, and I'm not picking again on anybody, but I noticed there wasn't much depth to the conversations they would have, And so for me, with that being there, and I mean, it wasn't who I was. I like to be behind behind the scenes. I'm a very quiet person. I can be quiet for hours. That's why I used to love to draw and to read comics. I could do that for hours, and nobody's going to come in and beat you with a belt or use extension cord or put cigarettes out in your body when you're quiet. And I learned to value quiet. And so, with that being said, when I got done, doing, the kind of thing in New York and traveling across the country, I said, what can I do? And I wanted to do something that made sense. I wanted to do something that I would be in more control of. When you're getting a check for $5,000 or $10,000, better believe the person writing that check got 20,000. You only get a percentage. And I'm like, I want to have more control of my money. And so I got with a mentor, and he said that you really should consider, doing what I do now, coaching. And the joke is, I can't stand the term life coach. Do not call me a life coach. I will flip out. I just don't like it, because I got my reasons. But I told him, I was like, no.
That's fine.
What's that?
That's fine. I won't say it. I promise.
No, it's kind of a running joke with a lot of my friends. But I told him, I was 30 at the time, and I said, I'm not old enough to be a coach. I was like, I haven't lived enough life. And then, being a great mentor, being a great, amazing person. He said, Vernon, you lived many lives already. And when he said that, I'm like, freak, he's got me. And I looked into it, and gosh, I was doing it for 3 years, just coaching. And one of my clients challenged me and said, you really need to speak on this. I said, absolutely not. I left a career because I did not want to be on the center. I'm not doing that. And then she said to me, you ask me to get uncomfortable all the time and you're not willing to. And I'm like, darn it, I got again. And I stepped out on stage and here we are. Things were going great. And now it's, it's just different, right? Because you never know where life is going to take you. But as long as you're, what we're talking about, I know prior to this conversation, I imagine it's going to come up now, as long as you're being intentional about pushing reality that you know it versus reality of how it could be. I think that's a lot of wisdom that I got from my upbringing. And I think another thing that I live by, I'm like, this is truly something I talk about often is I don't ask life for anything. I demand it. And some people might say, well, that's so cocky. Or, I remember I used to be called cocky. I was like, I'm not a cocky person. I don't believe it comes to me easily. I mean, some things come easier than others for sure, right? But when you are going out there with the intention that I'm going to get X result, I'm a big gym guy. If I go to that gym every day, 7 days a week, and I give an hour and 15 minutes of 100% commitment, there is no way possible my body won't change. It has to, because I'm demanding it. And it's the same thing that I do. It's not that I'm being aggressive, but I'm consistent. And I'm always keeping fire, rod on the fire, so to speak. And I'm to tell people, stop asking stuff for life, demand it. If you want it, you got to put the work in for it. But once you demand it with that sense of it's going to happen, life changes. And that's a lot of the things that led to, me pulling myself to, this place and me, being lifted to the next place I'm headed in life.
Wow. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your origin story. And oh my gosh, I took so many notes. The kerosene heater to, potentially being kidnapped, to the rotary phone, which made me smile because that's my generation. I will dial and and then we got the push button, do. All right. And you've been through some character building moments, and, I could go through and I wrote down all these bullet points, but bottom line, you just choose that you didn't want to be normal. And people say to me, I strive to be normal. I tell them, no, I strive to be abnormal. I don't want to be the same like everybody else, because the society or the committee that controls us doesn't want us to, live past our capabilities. We have learned behavior from our parents. You talked about, flying. You talked about your dad being scared of you flying, and that you don't go anywhere. You just stay. The learned behavior we get from our parents, though it's done through love, right? Most often it's done through love and caring. It's broken, and it's passed on from generation to generation. And I'm proud of you. You decided to break the chain. And it's no disrespect to your loved ones or your parents. You wanted more to life. And that is so admirable to, just the different things you talked about. And you talked about you got to demand what you want. Your mentor said, get uncomfortable, right? And challenge you. You say it to me. So now you're not going to be willing to do it, right? You do have to demand what you want, but then you got to put the work in. So,
yes.
I have a big problem. I did a video here recently on my vlog about stuff like The Secret. I think The Secret is one component of a formula, but The Secret on its own is bullshit. Honestly, bullshit, because you cannot speak things into existence without a plan, without actionable steps to take it to the end result.
Absolutely.
And I get people that argue with me about it. And I have clients and I have friends that have spent tens of thousands of dollars on going on different speaking tours with The Secret down into the US, going on cruises and that. And I look at them years later and they're no farther ahead because they were taught to think positive and speak positive and do this and talk to the universe. So, so back to you demand what you want, but you have to have some sort of system in place. You have to itemize, put together a plan. You got a goal set, and then you have to put actionable things in place to achieve what we want. It just doesn't happen by accident. And people that believe in the things like The Secret that are the end, going to give them to their end result that they want in the end game are sadly mistaken. And
Mm-hmm.
people that teach the secret are back to what you and I talked to, the difference between a coach and a mentor. No disrespect to coaches. A lot of people call themselves coaches and really they're a mentor because they've experienced and lived life and they can help others achieve success by duplicating the processes that they went through, teaching it to others, but now in a collapsible time frame because they don't have to live all the mistakes that their mentor went through, right? So you demand what you want, you put actionable steps into doing it. You didn't let other people tell you you couldn't do it, right? You didn't let the learned behavior of your past, of being raised as, like you said, as being a black kid and, you know, living in a predominantly white area, being evicted twice, all those things you could have used as excuses, like many in society, as an anchor over your shoulder to hold you back. Instead, you used it as your reason why you didn't want to be there, to, you know, go through the struggle, because I guarantee there were struggles along your journey, but
Oh
you
yeah.
use them as a stepping stone. I tell people, struggles aren't a bad thing. Failure isn't a bad thing. All it is a stepping stone for your next success. Sit and analyze and learn from it. Make sure you have good associations. And associations, I always tell people, aren't just about the people you associate with. It's what you put into your brain, the
Yes.
podcasts, the audio books, the written word that you read, when it's newsprint or a book, what do you watch on television? And I'm not saying you shouldn't watch entertainment, because remember, just like you, I'm a Marvel fan. I like entertainment for the pure entertainment, but I don't live in that world. I don't live vicariously through somebody. I watch a show once in a while that I kind of like called Billions. I don't know if you've ever
Yeah,
seen it.
yeah.
And
Okay.
Billions isn't real. That's not real life. Is there people that are like that? Absolutely. But the way they present it, that's not real life. That's just, you know, and if it is, I'm glad I don't see it. Right. It's not reality. Right. So you took your reality as a child, you built upon that, you wanted more, you stepped out on faith. You had multiple people say no to you, but like you said, one person said no, or pardon me, one person said yes. And you carpe diem, you seized the day and you developed that into a very successful part of your journey. And then you just kept on using it for the next stepping stone, the next stepping stone. And you were okay with getting uncomfortable and having other people challenge you, which most people aren't. You didn't get maybe you did at one point in time, you know, you resist that sort of thing, but you still got past it. You still carpe diem, you still seized the day, and look where you are now. Congratulations. And thanks so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
You're making me cheese hardcore, man. I appreciate you appreciating me. You know,
Uh, Absolutely, brother.
I think, about struggles, and this is something I talk to clients, about as well. I never interrupt struggle that promotes growth. Something, and I want to make sure I identify what, I pull apart and kind of talk about what struggle is. So you don't want somebody thinking you got to stay in pain, right? But I mean, let's say, for example, like I wish I hadn't have said that, right? Because you need to feel that sometimes, like, hey, I need to be more selective with my words. For me, my struggle was nothing more than it was preparation. Once you get laughed at for the things that I got laughed at, it's not that hard to put yourself out there and be different, to be extraordinary, because the ordinary don't understand because they're used to fitting in. But once you've been the outcast, you're like, I don't care what you say anyway. You're not going to be in my corner to start with. Yeah, at the end of the day, you're not with it now. And it's not that I don't, want to oversell being an outcast is a great thing, but I'm just mean when you recognize, when you push against what everyone else is doing and do what you want. And because I kind of had that kind of thick skin built up, I earned that I wouldn't say callousness, but I earned that, it's there, but it's not who I am. You just recognize that living to be normal is a sin for me. We are capable of some amazing things. And I know a lot of people never reach their full potential, for many reasons. And I think the most tragic reason is because you've bought in someone's belief of just being normal. And that always has scared me. I remember just looking at the modeling and they would say, you would never be able to get a magazine cover. I remember my agent said that. And did not sit well with me. He's like, well, you're not going to get that. And da, 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 da. And I'm like, dude, you just wait. It was like 6 months later. And it wasn't luck. I want to make sure I say that. It wasn't because, like you were mentioning about the secret and you just take that one encapsulated belief. No, it was a lot of actions. I did some strategies and I started realizing reverse engineered some things that people had done. And it worked. Then it started working again. But it's, when you're being extraordinary, being ordinary is not even using the word ordinary. Being realistic is a disease that is prevalent in society. I remember when I was a bartender, people would always say, well, how do you keep getting these, 30 and 45% tips? It wasn't uncommon for me to get $50 tips on, $50 tips on a regular basis. Like, how are you doing that? It's like, because I demand unrealistic things to happen in life. I give unrealistic service. I'm always laughing. I'm making people love to laugh. But it's the same thing with this business, with my career now. Who gets in business and says I'm a happiness coach? 7 years. You know how many people told me I was stupid and what the heck are you doing? No one thought I'd be successful, right? And I'm sitting there cracking up in my head. I'm like, just watch. You don't even know what I'm talking about. You know nothing. But you have to be a little unrealistic in life. And once you get those results, you recognize that you will spend, and this is my belief, you will spend so much time of your life just doing the bare minimum when all you need to do be unrealistic is be prepared for some people not to understand what you're doing. Be prepared for that because they don't get it. They don't have the same thoughts or visions or beliefs that you do. And that's okay. But they will once you keep going because they're going to ask you, why are you doing it? They're going to ask you how you did it. I know I kind of went off on a tangent there, but.
That's okay. No, it's great because I went through and I marked off one of the questions about critics. So you've already answered that. Realistically, though, we're going to have haters. One of my friends, my mentors that I mentioned to you, Tony Watley, he talks about the fact we celebrated in our group when people get critics and haters because you've arrived when you've made others uncomfortable because their normalcy has been comfortable. And when you go outside of that, it makes them uncomfortable because they wish they had what you have, which is your tenacity to take on risk. Right? It's so true though. It may sound cheesy, but without risk, there is no reward. And one of the things you mentioned one of the things that is a pet peeve of mine is when people say, oh, that person's lucky, right? But they don't see all the work that people put in from the start of the process to where their people are now criticizing or saying, oh, well, that person's lucky, must be nice or whatever. That's a pet peeve of mine. And a person that I've seen live speak a few times, he one time said at a conference, I was down in Salt Lake City, and this was in the 90s. And he said, you know what? Luck is a loser's excuse for a winner's completion. And that just like I was just like, what? And he said, I'm going to say that again. Luck is a loser's excuse for a winner's completion. And I have taught that and talked about that to people for years, especially now. It all depends how people present it. Oh, it must be lucky that such and such has done this, or they'll say, oh, you've been so lucky. And I'll say, what is your definition of luck? Oh, you just all of a sudden had this happen. Really? Did you see all the sleepless nights I had? Did you see all the times that I was struggling to come up with ideas, money, support? Did you see any of the trials and tribulations I went through, the amount of times I skinned my knee, the amount of things that went wrong, right? That I had to reset, start over again. Well, no, I didn't mean anything about it. Well, the reason I'm talking to you about it is because one person at a time, I'm going to make them understand that luck is a loser's excuse for a winner's completion. That luck doesn't exist, right? Now you can have breaks where you meet the right person that gives you the right advice, that gives you the right support. You can have that happen in your life, sure, Vernon. But the biggest thing is you still have to act on it. You have to act on it. Things sometimes, magically they'll say drop in your lap, but you still have to be actionable about it. You still have to take and work on the fact of, what's been presented to you, Now, if you want to consider that luck, that still to me is not luck, because Vernon has to decide, Dwight has to decide to say, hey, this is an opportunity. Now, what am I going to do with that opportunity? Am I going to take it? Am I going to run with it? Or am I going to just fold like a deck of cards and be like the rest of society and normal? And as I don't want to be normal ever. I've always strived to be that outcast in some regards, because, you know, our stories aren't the same in the sense of I moved, raised in a middle-class family, small community of, like, at the time, 10,000 people. And, you know, but I was bullied a lot because I had health issues, I had asthma, I had, you know, just different things. So I got picked on, bullied, became very, sheltered, hid from things. And that's when I escaped into the world of comics, like you've mentioned, different things like that. I escaped into comic books. I escaped into television, into books, just different things that I utilized to protect myself. Mm-hmm. But then I realized one day, just as you talked about, I wanted more out of life. And in order for me to do that, I had to do risk. I had to take on risks. I didn't know what mentorship was. I didn't know coaching, because back then there was no internet. There was none of that stuff. I'd dial up with my computer on a little dial-up modem and go on to bulletin boards, right? BBSs and stuff like that, right? You go in and do stuff like that. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I just knew that I wanted more to life, and that I didn't want to be like all the people that I'd hear my parents talking about that were suffering, struggling. Oh, this business closed down, or such and such are getting divorced. They can't afford, either of them, to even keep the matrimonial home. They can't afford to pay their bills. Now one's going to go move in with their parents, with the kids. The other one's going to go live with a brother or sister, parents, or whatever, because they have nothing. And, like we talked about, financial strife is the number one cause of divorce. But, luck doesn't factor into nothing, right? You just didn't want to be normal. You went out and did actionable things, and you accelerated your life, and look where you are now. But that journey of hills and valleys was a real thing. People that are listening, luck, again, does not exist. You can have things that drop into your lap, right? Now, if you win the lottery, that's luck. Right? There's no way that, even if you buy a raffle ticket in a local soccer team or basketball team or school or whatever, selling a raffle ticket, and you can win $500, let's say. If you win, that's luck. It's not like you could calculate and figure, maybe you could buy X amount of tickets, increase your odds that your luck would make you win. But, that's luck. But in life, in business, there's no luck. Actionable steps, falling, tripping, getting up, dusting yourself off. Oh, maybe this isn't the right thing for me. What else can I do? Now you take all those learning experiences from your failure, use it as a stepping stone to your next experience, or maybe it's a stepping stone to do what you failed at better until it actually works. And yeah, that's a pet peeve of mine. I can't stand when people say, oh, you're so lucky.
I get it. Do you mind if I comment on something?
Sure.
Everything you say, right up my alley. I just want the audience, just want everyone to listen to something I think a lot of that, if you don't pay attention to it, you can miss it. We're very different people, but we have lots in common, right? And I don't think people sit back enough and really pay attention to what people are talking about when they talk about their lives. Like, I think people miss out on so much by not listening to people, seeing what they have in common versus their differences. Like, we don't have the same exact childhood, but we got a lot of similarities, right?
I agree.
And it's amazing that, with every comic book fan that I, run across, that reunites us. It's amazing how those origin stories there coincide. The other thing I want to point out is there are many spectators in life, and these are the people who use the words like lucky. There are not many participants. And it's so important that you surround yourself, especially if you want to become a big, a person of action, a person of strategic action, or I should say, because you can give someone a treasure map, but they still have to dig. And that's what people don't remember. And that's what spectators do. They might have the same opportunities you did, but you decided to do something with it, right? You were willing to say, I'm going to put X effort in and deal with some of those things that's going to come up. Some you expect, some are unexpected, and I'm going to get an X result. And I think and I'm saying this because a lot of times I know when you're waiting on, not trying to sound cliche, but when you have a dream, you hesitate many times because you might have too many spectators in your life. And when you have people who are participants, you mentioned that your friend, Watley, what's Tim?
Tony.
Tony
Yeah.
Watley. He is a participant in life. He challenged you. Oh, you're going to be the first guest. When you have people who are participating in life, it's the risk of maybe not fitting in, or the risk of, oh, I've never done this before, becomes real small because you recognize when you're in good company, you tried, right? And they get it. And so many people don't try. They don't really put forth effort. They might, show up, but they're not really trying. I'm not picking on anybody, but for anybody, I'm telling you, if you really want to experience things in life that you haven't experienced before, and maybe you're on the fence and maybe you're not worried about being uncomfortable with being uncomfortable, it's your environment. There's no man or woman walking this earth who's stronger than their environment. Nobody. It's like, just to kind of expand on that, really think about it. If you want to run a marathon, never ran a marathon in your life. If you were hanging around a bunch of friends who've never ran a marathon, of course, they could say things that put doubt in your head. Man, that's a long way. Oh my gosh, I could never do that. Oh, I would never do this. And all these things that don't help you, right? But if you're in an environment, or you're on that VBS bulletin board, right? You're on that forum with people who are doing it daily, weekly, monthly, who are having a nutrition, who are looking at ways they can improve their time. When you're in an environment like that, all of a sudden you're saying you're doing a marathon, like, oh yeah, I did an ultra marathon last week. And you're like, what? All of a sudden you're in this environment where you're being nurtured to be successful. And I know it's good to read books. I love books, but you got to make sure you protect your environment, or if you don't have it, create it. And if you don't have people that you can reach out to directly, I started on YouTube. I would just find people and I would listen, and I would just, practice saying things they would say, or practice, like, hey, I need to remember that when I talk to people. I need to do this. But you have to create an environment of success. You got to create an environment of strategic action, to really help you get out of these people who call you lucky, but
It's frustrating, but it is what it is. And yeah, one last note, and we'll go on to the next thing. The comic connection you talked about. I have my parents give me years ago, and I have it out in my garage, like those big photocopier boxes where you have all your photocopy paper.
yeah.
I've got quite a few of them. I've got just about all the comics I had from when I was a kid that I used to buy.
Wow.
That are in there. Are they in the greatest shape? No, because I used to, right? I wasn't, oh, let's put it in plastic. It's pristine.
Uh,
No, I was a guy that I lived in that world. It helped me escape, right? So I appreciate that you brought that up. So one of the things that resonated with me, most kids have childhood, you have that wonder and that innocence, and life is all, oh, wow. And look at this amazing thing. And then we grow up, and then the reality and the harshness of life happens to us after the fact. We still have that innocence and wonder when we're younger. I read some stuff on that you had mentioned that you didn't have that childhood innocence and wonder, that it was robbed from you. So have you done anything specifically to accept that, to grow that, or is it just something that you've closed off as a chapter in your life?
my first reaction to that is I'm still a child. I think, and it's something I challenge, clients with, is everything that you needed to learn as an adult, you learned a majority of it as a child. And a big part of that, to answer that question directly, is dreaming and still having that innocence and still having that curiosity. I might not have had it then, but I have it every day. Really think about it. You got into a happiness coaching business. You got to have some big dreams. You got to be able to sit back there and wonder and create. And it's something that it's a gift that we as adults, we don't use often enough. In my practice, and what I push every one of my clients to do, is to have thinking time. And that's literally creative playtime, to daydream, to take your thoughts that you think are so silly and play with them. Because I tell you what, we get into business because our thoughts, and what that tells me, power, the power of thinking and the power of thoughts, you need to do that often and not live in a real, sometimes it's best not to have boundaries. And that's why I know daydreaming and, playing and being curious is just something I've kind of realized is people stop doing. And I saw that when I was, especially when I was bartending, I would see people who just look so sullen, they would come in and you could see they look like they're like 50 or 60. And I'm asking them, like, how old are you? And they're like, oh, age would come up and be like, they're finally like 35. And I'm like, oh my God, like I need, what's going on? And I started listening and they became so realistic. And there's other struggles there, of course, but it's recognized that so many people miss out on life because they're being realistic, because they're not keeping that childhood innocence alive. So for me, I still do that. There's many books that I use that, that I read every year to keep me there and remind me of the power of that. A big book that I live by and I'm always talking about is The Alchemist, Paolo Coelho. For me, that book, honestly, that was the book. It was a field guide. But I just love the quote, and it's another quote. I mean, my book just came out, was getting published right now. And I started the book off with that quote. And it says, why does the heart forget? And I don't want to ruin the story for anyone who hasn't read it, or, I don't want to ruin it. But the alchemist responds, because the heart doesn't want to suffer. And I think so many people have had life come at them. They forgot how important it is to dream and they just don't want to suffer anymore. But that book it opens the door to like using your imagination freely, regularly, regardless of what the circumstances might be showing. It's something, because childhood is something that I'm not saying that, people take it for granted, but think he's got maybe, and this for any parent out there, life is coming at kids now during a pandemic, can't go to school. He's learning from home. I'm working from home. And they have so many things they have to worry about. Look, play with them, not play at them, play with them. And then but just by design, you end up having more fun yourself and you won't be worried or stressed, or if you are, you'll be less worried or less stressed. But be a kid. I'm a kid. I let people know I'm a kid. I like to play.
I guess, oh man, that resonates. I'm more like you, as we talked about, we have a lot of commonalities than I realized. And the reason I say that is I was so scarred as a kid because of health issues, getting bullied, and just the things that I was told I couldn't do when actually I could have. If I would have been encouraged, I could have forced my way past that. I was taught to be subservient and a quitter. And I lost that child wonderment and innocence myself. And I realized that why I say that is when I play with my kids when they were younger, and now especially my grandkids, I get connected into setting up, like with my one grandson who's now 7, who was really little, or even my son who's now 21. We'd build these little tracks and have the little dinky cars, like the little Matchbox cars, and I'd get right into it. And I'd go to other people's houses and I'd think about the fact of they weren't playing with their children, or they were just kind of sitting and watching them play. Oh, that's not interacting. And that child wonderment, you're so right, is dead in so many people. So in other words, though, for you, and now I see for me, that's actually a strength. It's actually it made us better connect at the level of innocence where the innocent need that. My kids, my grandkids, they need us to be connected, and society beats that out of us. They really do. Oh, you need to grow up. You need to do this. You need to do that. You're still reading comic books. I heard that. I was like, yeah, I like comic books, right?
We don't like those people.
What? Your paper route money? My dad would go, what did you, well, I've saved a little bit. I got some of this. Or where'd you get all those comic books from? Well, he knew the answer. I bought them. Used my paper route money. I love comic books. My mom would take me to the drugstore and I'd have the big comic book rack and I'd be going like that. I want that one, that one, that one, that one. And I'd leave with like 8-10 comic books until the money that I had allotted for my comic books was gone. All right. But I had to escape because I felt my mind didn't have any ability, because I dreaded going to school. I dreaded extracurricular activities. My health got so bad by the time I was 12, 13, I had to give up hockey, I had to give up baseball, all those things. When in reality, if I had their proper support mechanism, I probably wouldn't have. I'd still have kept on doing it. I would have just limited what I could have done, but it wasn't given that opportunity. So, thank you so much for that. Yeah, thank you for that extra connection between you and I, and to the listeners, obviously. So this is what I was talking about, and you actually mentioned this. You're going to enjoy this part. You speak of having a gift of empathy, which really resonates with me. Last year, a mentor I follow by the name of Ed Milet asked on a post, "What do you consider your superpower?" My response was, "My superpower is empathy." He responded back to a handful of the hundreds of responses he gets, and one of those was mine. He said, "No one has ever said that empathy is a superpower when I've asked this question prior." And he completely agreed with me, and he wanted to know why I believed this. And I don't remember the exact response, but it was something to the extent, my response was along the lines that I feel empathy is a superpower, as it can help uplift those hurting in our world by allowing a unique connection, understanding, and acceptance of their hurt, and take away potentially their pain because of that connection. The biggest plus of empathy, that it helps build stronger connected relationships with others, thus the ability for individuals to accept things that can help them change due to the empathy connection. What point in your life did you realize you had this gift? And how important is it for those who have this gift and want to help others learn to utilize it correctly?
This is such a world-class question. Thank you for asking this. It wasn't until I was about 22 that I thought everybody, and the gift of long suffering, and I say it's a gift, not to diminish some of the things that I've been through and some of the things my family's experienced alongside of me. But what that did was it allowed me to see the next steps with things, like with my mom's boyfriend. He would come in, using like a punching bag, and after you get hit 2 or 3 times, you learn to take a punch a little bit better, right? You're 10 years old, and you would just be able to say things to people. And he would say something like, just kind of go back before I go forward, if I recognize as a gift, I would say things to him. He would come in, beat the door, like, "Why are you so quiet in here? You're in here doing something you're not supposed to do." And he's got like the belt, and he's about to hit me. And I'm like, "And what do you think's going to happen next?" And all of a sudden he would just it would wake him up. And I'm thinking, what do you think's going to happen next? Like, I didn't recognize that wasn't a normal way of kind of thinking things, making people think, or making people recognize there's extra steps here. And, things like that would happen often. And, when I was bartending, I started to recognize I would just look at people. And, I don't look at people with my eyes. I see them, sure. And I don't pity people. I want to make sure I say that, but I see what the struggle is. I can see it clear as day. It only takes a few seconds. And it's not that I diagnose them. It's not that I pathologize them, but I recognize where they're at. And that gift of long suffering is a gift because I can see it. And then it allows me to, course correct. Somebody's having a tough time, and, there's one client that came to my mind. He was having a really tough time. He couldn't figure out why he couldn't keep a job. And, when he first comes in, just, make the story brief. His girlfriend contacted me, said, "Hey, I would love to have my boyfriend come meet me." And I'm like, this is going to be weird, because whenever it's not the person, but it's a third party, I'm like, okay, this is odd. But, things like this happen. So the guy comes in, and, we're sitting down, and this is when we're meeting in person, and he's sitting there, and he didn't want to do the discovery sheet, the sheet that I ask a few questions. I really don't need it. I just do it to help persons before they come in to kind of be able to articulate things. He didn't do the sheet. And so I asked him, and, his name's Charles. And I said, "Charles, he didn't do the sheet." And I slid it over to him, and he looked at it and slid it back. And I'm thinking like, oh boy, this is going to be a fun one. And I'm literally in my mind, I say it sarcastically now, but I'm saying I was like, this is going to be fun because I love stuff like this. So, I do what I do, and, it takes about 5 or 10 minutes to talk to the true self. That's not whatever put the veneer on life, but the true self, who you really are, which you allow me to see that this is a gift because I get to be with a real person. Charles and I hit it off wonderfully. I mean, we were laughing. He told me he was one of 5. He told me he was the oldest. He told me about just so many different experiences he's had in his life. And I'm just sitting there. I mean, we're just having a great time, Dwight. And I'm like, just laughing. And I just let him know. He's like, oh man, I'd love to work together. And, and I just let him know. I was like, I don't think I'm a good fit for you. And he's like, looking at me. He's like, what do you mean you're not a good fit? I was like, I'm not a good fit for you. That's why he's looking at me. And he's like frowning, and he's like kind of throwing back. And granted, this guy's my elder, right? And so it's always kind of odd too, because I tend to work with older people. I mean, I tend to work with, older. I work with a variety of people. As long as you're 30 plus, we're working together. We can work together. I pulled out a piece of paper and wrote something down. I slid it to him. And he picked up the piece of paper and looked at it and dropped his head, started crying. And by the way, you want to take a guess what was on that piece of paper?
No, I'd rather you just tell me.
And I sat there and I just looked at him, and then, he wasn't sobbing, but I saw a couple of tears fall. Charles was illiterate, and I could see he was illiterate, and that's why he couldn't keep a job. After you got to do paperwork, and I was paying attention to the things he was telling me about, different jobs he had, the many jobs he's had. And I just started seeing some patterns. It's not that difficult to see. And my point of bringing this up is there's sometimes, because you've gone through some struggles, you can sympathize with someone's, reluctancy to share some things, and they don't need to share it. It's not my business, and that's what I love about the gift of long suffering. And because he hid it for so long, he was so ashamed of it, 30, 40 years of his life with all he needed to do. And, I got him pointing in the direction so he could get, handle these things. We're talking about something that can be resolved in 90 days, right? I'm not saying you'd be proficient in it, but you could start being able to read, being able to write your name and things like that. Something that could take 90 days, 120 days, or even a year took 30 years. Now, if you could go immediately for the pain and versus making it fun for someone, you could really damage someone. But the gift of long suffering, for me, it's recognizing where a person is and where they want to be and just help them, kind of show them the way. Now, the second part of your question, I think it's important, and this is something, I actually be doing a Facebook Live on this because I was going to do it later this week, but everybody needs to know their superpower, not what you're good at, not what you're great at, but what you are amazing at. Stop being humble. Stop it. There's too much humble out there. And there are many reasons why you need to be humble. I get it. Don't make little Johnny feel bad. Don't beat Sarah up beat too high of a score for Sarah. You can hurt her feelings. There's many reasons for that, but this isn't the time to be humble anymore. And when you step into what your superpower are, because I want to get into why it's important because you need to step into those things first. Forget everything else. Lay out your top 5 superpowers. You lean on those first. And that's where I really attribute a lot of the successes I've had. I can make anybody laugh. I don't care who you are. It has been time tested. My grandmother was actively, dying. And I had everybody laughing in the hospital. In the room, they're laughing. My grandmother, I'm happy I made her laugh before she died. I love my grandmother, but my sense of humor, my presence. And he said, at first it's going to feel a little awkward because you're going to feel like you're bragging, but you need to brag. Because let me tell you something, when you walk out those doors, life will find everything to find what's wrong with you. You need to know who you are first, right? Because when you step into that, you don't worry about if people say it, I can prove it. I'm not going to prove because I don't prove myself to anybody, but you lean with that, my sense of humor, my presence, the way that I can communicate, the way that I can sit back and just make you feel like we've been friends for years. I thought that was normal. I tell it how it is. I like to have fun. Who doesn't want to hang out with a guy like that, right? But for yourself, for audience, and I'm sure you already know these things, you've got to lean with that first, because when you do that first, life gets more manageable. Stop trying to use other people's tools for yourself. That's not your tool. That's not. You're using a hammer when you need a screwdriver. Use your screwdriver. It's a screw. Use it. Don't just use his nail. That works for him or her, but that doesn't work for you. But know your superpower. Know what you're amazing at, and be proud to share with people, because people are looking for other people to help them shine brighter. And, with everything that's going on with the things in the world now, we don't need to say it. I call it the big reset. We are looking for more ways to be positive now more than any time that I've seen in my 30 plus years living this life. And we need people to stand up into who they are so we can have permission to be more successful.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so correct. And most people don't want to admit what their superpower is. Many people don't even have a clue when I ask them that, what is your superpower? They don't have a clue because they've never had moments in their life where they weren't living, like you said, what other people's expectations, like we're all unique, like our fingerprints, and people don't take that for granted. They let other people define who they are, and they
Yes.
live that definition of what other people define them to be. And they live their whole lives like that. Well, they live from their childhood to their youth to their adulthood, the stigma or the template that somebody else applied onto them. And they figured that's, my dad used to always do this. My mom used to always do this. So that's why I do it. Cause I'll ask people, why do you do that? My mom did it. My dad did it. My brother or sister. And they have no identity. There's a huge identity crisis in our society as you talk about the giant reset. And it is scary. And the problem with having a superpower of empathy for me, brother, I would be sitting down here, single dad, raising my kids on my own, and I could feel the hurt 2 floors up, like like 1 floor up on the second story. I could feel the radiated pain of my one daughter who was going through challenges, or I could feel the pain from my son from his bedroom basement, like his bedroom in the basement. And it can be a superpower, but a superpower empathy is something you have to, it can be like they say with superheroes, you can do good things with your power, you can do bad things with your power. And it's been a strength for me, but it's also been a hindrance to me as well, because sometimes I have a hard time and I accept all that and I can't release it because that person isn't ready for me to help them yet. I can feel their negative energy. I can feel their hurt, their sorrow, their suffering, their quiet desperation. And so it can be a superpower because I can now help people release that. And I can be more cognizant of their circumstances and say things differently because the power of the word, the verbalized or written word is, people underestimate the power of what we say, right?
Yes.
So like I used to always tell my kids, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And then what is your state of mind when somebody's saying something to you is how you're going to interpret it, just like the written word, a text, an email, whatever the case may be. You interpret it based on where your thought process is at. So, when you're talking to somebody, be very cognizant of the words that are coming out of your mouth. And you can train yourself that you can do it on the fly. You don't have to sit and pause. You can talk and be very influential upon somebody, but you can influence them in a bad way when you're empathetic, and you can influence them in a good way. You always want to obviously do the power of good to uplift people. But again, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I use this example with people. Think about, I don't know if you did this in school, but when I was a kid in school, you put everybody in a big ring and teacher would whisper in one kid's ear, and we go around the room. And by the time it went around, it started out as, a mouse. And by the time it got here, it was an elephant. Right? Everybody's miscommunicating all the way along the way. They're not keeping their communication. Everybody interprets things differently. And that's why it's so important for a person to say things and articulate and make sure. I make people repeat things back to me. Right? Depending on the person and the body language, I'll say to them, we've been talking for a while. Can you tell me what we've been communicating about? Like, what is your perception of it? Because their perception, honestly, is their reality. Absolutely. Doesn't matter. I can work on my wordsmithing and I can get really good at saying things. And, like I said, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I can get my tone down right. That still doesn't mean that they're not going to interpret it the wrong way. Right. So sometimes people will say, well, you said this and this and that. And I'll say to them, well, actually, this is what my intent was. And I'll re-explain it, just like you asking me to re-ask the question. Everybody hears differently. We just have to be people that use our superpower. If your superpower, like ours is empathy, I have more than one, but that's my major one. Use it for good. and learn how to expel because like I said, I could pick up all that stuff from my kids, and it would overwhelm me some days, especially with 4 daughters, right? My son wasn't as bad of emoting stuff where I could pick up on it, right? But yeah, empathy is something that is so, yeah, it's so misunderstood, and it's something that so many people need to learn, even if it's not their superpower. Learn how to be caring, compassionate human beings and uplift people, and they just don't do it. So one of there's so many other things. We're going to end up having to have another interview in the future, which is not bad. I'm not saying it's bad at all. You show entrepreneurs how to leverage happiness to become more successful, strategic, and influential, both personally and professionally. How does one leverage their happiness to accomplish this?
Great question. The first step is understanding how What's Your Happy interprets happiness. My practice is called What's Your Happy? Not my happy, not your mama's happy, not your dad's, not your kids. It's your happy. And we all have a personal definition of happiness. And that, it's something that we weren't emphasized to hold on to as children. Let me explain. There's certain things that you do that don't really make you happy, but you do it because you're told that you'll have happiness. For example, buy this luxury car with X feature and this and the other, and you will be happy, and women will love you, and men will go crazy over you, right? And they're telling you to do these things, be happy. And we can become entranced by this. And just let people know, like, yeah, you're happy now. In 6 months, you're gonna get tired of paying for that car. But with happiness for me, happiness for what you're happy, it's recognizing that you're happy cannot, and I stress this. I'll get to the rules in a second. But
Okay,
happiness is energy. Happiness is all energy. That's all happiness is to me. That is it, nothing else. And your happy is life changing, and you need to do it weekly, daily is recommended. For example, I love to go to grocery stores and just look around. I don't know what it is. That is my thing. I love it. Well, I do know why. I love to cook. That's one of my other happies. It's you walk into, when I was when I went to Florida, I was thinking my most recent trip, but prior to all this, I went to Florida, and I went to the grocery store, and I was amazed with the different types of bananas and the plantains and the this and the that, and they had these huge avocados. And in my brain, I'm like, I can make this, I can make that, I can make this, and it's just like this creative space. I got the kind of artsy nerd background too. But that's my happy. I feel recharged. It lights me up. I love to cook. I'll be in the kitchen and, I'm just going nuts in there and I'm just having fun. It's my happy place. I've told my clients, when you're doing your happy, what does that do? Concentrate. When we don't do our happy, we start developing low energy. There's no man or woman exempt from this. Concentration, focus, and awareness are gone when energy's low. You're trying to figure out why things won't work and why you become so negative, why you become so critical and judgmental. You start looking at and this is when energy's low, when you're not doing your happy. I want to make sure I say that again. But when we have low energy, your strongest characteristic about you works against you. Let me go into detail about this. It's recognizing that if you have a very strong brain, or maybe you have a very critical analytical mind, maybe you can figure out the dang things out to the atoms and figure it out. It will work against you because when energy's low, all of a sudden you're trying to figure out, why is it taking me 2 hours to do something and it normally takes me an hour? Or why is it taking me 2 days to do something and it normally takes me a day? What do smart, capable people do? We start doubling down on things, right? So now it's taking you 3 days, you're worn out, you're frustrated, and now you're really getting to a place because now you're tired, you're frustrated, it's not working. And then all of a sudden you hear this. We talked about this female dog voice earlier. You'll hear that you're not good enough, you're stupid. What's wrong with you? And you start getting all this narrative that comes out of nowhere, right? And then what I push every entrepreneur, business owner to do is you have to do your happy. It's where I start everybody. Now with your happy, I need to qualify this. I was talking about the rules. These are the 3 rules with your happy. You're happy or having fun. It cannot, please, folks, this is anything I want you to take away. Just remember this. I promise you it will change so much with you. It cannot involve buying or spending. It cannot. I'm telling you right now, you do not want a new credit card bill. Number two, it cannot involve food or alcohol. Cabernet will get you into trouble, okay? And the last thing you want to do is have more BLTs go into your belly, right? We talked about nutrition and health. And the third one is it only can involve yourself. Now I ask this question, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people, 40 people, and everyone hand goes up. And then when I throw the qualifiers out, 98% of their hands are down. And then I'll pass the mic to somebody. I'm like, hey, what's your happy? And they will say, well, I love, walking in a park with my kids, me and my kids. I'm like, that doesn't count. I'm like, what? I'm like, look, I love little, Tyrone as much as you do. I love my Logan, but it has to involve yourself. And when I tell people this, and I get people to really think, we talked about making people think, they look at me like I'm crazy. And I let people know it's okay if you don't have a happy and you don't know what your happy is. But this is when it goes back to the basic tenets that we learned as a child. You need to get curious. What did you used to do for fun? I'll be talking with someone and they're trying to say that my business is here and this isn't working, this is working. And I just start getting them to play. And we'll do it during the session. We'll just start talking about just whatever. I got different methods I use with different personalities because everyone's different. And you can just watch them come to life. You will see someone who will have, like you mentioned, being really staunch, or they just be really uptight. You can see it. And they're all of a sudden, they're just moving those joints around. Somebody who might be arthritic is now just doing a locomotion, right? And we're just having fun. And we sit down and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, so you ready to come up with a plan? I'm like, yes. And then it comes out of nowhere. I might have to give a few nudges here and there, but it's recognizing that you need energy. You have to have this energy. And without it, things just don't work that way. Our brains are designed, and when we talked about this, we touched on this briefly earlier. Our brains are designed to keep us alive. They're not designed to keep us happy. And being alive doesn't mean we're going to this great, fun, positive place where we're creating, where we're imagining, where we're learning how to have deeper, more enriching conversations and learning how to pay attention to people more. Those things take energy. And even learning, you learn faster when you have higher energy. I don't know your states. I don't know if I'm familiar with like Bill Nye the Science Guy. Do you remember that show?
Yeah.
Like he made it fun. And people have forgotten that you need to make things fun. And if you're having more fun with it, it's going to stick. You remember that time when you went to the theme park? This happened, you remember that, because it's a fun time. But when the energies get slow, we forget these things. You need to be reminded of it. And we got to be curious about things that used to make us happy. But when you are in that more high energy state, life is sweeter. It's not that you don't have problems. And being happy for me, for what you're happy, it's not that you walk around with a smile on your face all the time. That's medication. That's not happiness. But it's recognizing that I got this. This is going to happen. It's going to take some time. It might take a little more effort than what I would, but I got this, because you start learning that, a lot of life is a puzzle. And people are like, oh my gosh, how do you like having problems? It's not that I like having problems. I just see life as a puzzle most of the time. And I love puzzles. Me and my son will put a 50-piece, 100-piece, 200-piece puzzle together because it's our fun thing. It's the same thing, the same analogy with life. Have fun with it. Figure out how to make it fun. Do fun things. Listen to music that lights you up. If you're upset with your spouse and your boss ticks you off, you're going to come in the house, you're scared you're going to spread it to your kids, which can happen, which will happen, expected. Someone's going to cut you off at the light. Someone's going to say something you don't like. Get into your car, listen to Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You, and sing it with her because she needs you to help her, right? Or listen to Madonna, or listen to Aerosmith. Listen to something that you like. I love Moana. I tell everyone that. I love Moana. I will sing How Far I Will Go in a minute. Sounds horrible, but that's fun. But when you do those things right before you're about to have, you don't want to pass certain energy off to people or certain moods, right? Or just, you don't want to make it a cantankerous environment. When you're doing those things, it takes it down a notch significantly. But got on my high horse on that one. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I love the music you just mentioned. I love all three of them. And I own CDs back. I actually have CDs and I used to have cassettes, but I got rid of all of them. But love Whitney Houston, love Aerosmith, love Madonna, right? Unfortunately, I've seen two of those three in concert. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to see Whitney Houston, but
I got to meet Madonna one time on set when I worked. That was like one of my crowning moments. I got to meet her on set. It was the coolest thing. I got to sit right next to her, and she looked at me like I was crazy, and then she just kept doing her thing. But anyway,
yeah.
Just when you think of that.
One of the things you talked about, though, medication-induced happiness. That is so, that was the premise of what you were talking about. We walk around in society today and people are suffering from they get diagnosed by doctors that are driven by the prescription industry, by the pharmaceutical companies, and they write a script and they really don't diagnose, they really don't troubleshoot, and kids are given medication. Two of my kids suffered through that. Doctors give them ADHD medication, or they're depressed, give them this, or they're suffering from anxiety, give them this. They put band-aids, medically induced happiness or stability, instead of going to the root problem of their 6 inches between their ears, that their environment's creating that circumstance. They need to sit down with that child or that adult and figure out where they're broken and help them rebuild, right? Mm-hmm. To a point where maybe it's so bad that they do need to have prescription meds. So for those listening, don't think I'm totally against it. I'm saying that too many people use it as a lifetime crutch, and maybe it's needed momentarily, but what you really need is you need people that are going to help pinpoint the challenges that got you to that circumstance, or challenge, maybe it's more than one, maybe it's a bunch of challenges, and just help you so that you don't have to medicate yourself the rest of your life. Like you talked about the fact, don't use buying things. I teach people that too. That's a temporary thing. You buy something, you feel good, you get an endorphin hit, then you get the bill. You said, like, don't use credit card. You don't want to have another credit card. No alcohol, because that's it. Number one, alcohol is a depressant. So that temporary euphoria is very short-lived, and it actually accelerates when you're coming down from it. And the next day, it actually accelerates and makes worse what your state of mind is. And people don't realize the after effects of alcohol. I'm not saying don't drink, right? But drink in the right state. Drink where you're in the right state. And you talked about the fact of, it should only involve yourself, right? What makes you happy? For me, it's hiking. I love hiking, right? That's my happy spot. And I've done quite a bit of hiking, even this year. So state change is so important. You brought that up, and music helps change your state. Podcasts help change your states, but it's back to what I talked about way back into this conversation about associations. Your associations of what you listen to, who you communicate with, who you hang out with, affect your state. So if your state is depressive when you're around somebody, or you're listening to certain music, or you're watching a certain show, you're doing the wrong things, right? But people search it out. Society has all this boo-hoo, woo-hoo stuff. And, even Whitney Houston's song, you talk about, I'll always love you. Like, it's got a defined theme. It's not a depressive song if you think of it and listen to it the right way, right? Mm-hmm. But other people will use it as a thing to make their state so they can have a box of Kleenex beside them and cry. Our interpretation of what we listen to can be different for different people. May not agree, but, listening to certain people when they're depressed, all of a sudden, even my kids or other people, even myself in my life, I'd put on a sad song. Like Aerosmith, for an example, has really sad songs, but really, if I want to pick myself up, I'm listening to Love in an Elevator, right? Stuff like that, because it's going to lift you up. Yeah. But there's some really depressive songs that they have too. So I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to the genre of all types of music. Listen to it in the right state that you're in, so you don't let that song, that movie, that book, that podcast drag you down. You should be using things in life to lift you up. And when I'm in a lifted up state, I can hear a depressing song and it doesn't depress me. I just listen to the song. Oh, that was the good tune that they wrote.
You bring up a great point. This organism, this system has many ebbs and flows, right? It's going to have, a variety of emotions that, I'm a firm believer, we do not have a strong enough vocabulary to name everything that we feel, right? But I do know that, I do want to say, like, Matt, I want to make sure, because I never want anyone to feel less than or get the sense. I want to make a reference to something like with medication interventions. They are necessary many times. I never want to say that they're not. Never, ever, ever. I never want to vilify anything like that or get the sense that I'm vilifying. I'm just recognizing that sometimes there are symptoms that, are there any other alternative methods?
Underlying things, yeah.
Because I've had some very nasty interactions of things that have happened with clients over the years. But there are many things that we're going to experience in life that, you know, I do what people ask me, well, you don't ever seem like you're mad. No, I get mad. Like, ask my son. Like, you know what I mean? Like, my son drives me bonkers sometimes. But it's recognizing that when we're focusing and more intentional about doing our happy, you have high lows. It's sometimes I do want to watch a sad movie, right? Sometimes I do want to watch a movie like The Bodyguard, you know, that, you know, with the Houston.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
man, that's a sad movie, but it's a good sad movie. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like,
you hit the nail on the head.
and it's just, it's not
You're
that
watching it for the right reasons.
exactly.
You're
Like, I
not
don't
using it to
watch it.
pull
Yeah,
you down. You're not using
right.
it to pull you down in life. You're not using it to make you more subservient to your thoughts, your negative thoughts. I love that movie, by the
I know,
way.
me too.
Uh,
Man, we got a
I've
lot in
seen it.
common.
I've seen it. I used to have it on VHS tape. It might even still be in a box in the basement. I used to watch that movie so many times. Even like a movie like Purple Rain. I'm a
Oh my
huge Prince
gosh.
fan. I've seen Purple Rain probably 20, 25 times. And yeah, you watch that movie. There's some tough things in that movie, but there's
Yeah.
also great messages. But yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you, dude. We
Yeah,
got so
well,
much in
we're
common. This is
we're
awesome.
we definitely are gonna have to get you on my podcast again, and
Oh
or
yeah.
just have some social calls together where we have a coffee or a drink or whatever and just visit on it in one evening. I'd love to get to know you better. But you know, Vernon, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
My reaction, my thought that I would share is we must work very hard not to become our struggle, whatever that struggle may be. And I'm not saying struggle as in, you know, pain and misery. I'm just saying whatever we're working towards. Sometimes some of us, and I can even say this for myself because I had to work through some things, they were generational struggles where, you know, just brought about different thoughts I couldn't achieve, or just someone who might believe that they're not good enough, or someone might believe, is this going to work? We must constantly work hard to not to become that. That's not you. That's what you could be experiencing. That could be what you've experienced. That could be a result that you've gotten before, but that's not who you are. And when it regards to getting yourself to the next level, oftentimes that's what gets in our way. We become completely, I don't want to say enamored, but we become just entrenched in that. And we can end up identifying with it. And it's not who you are, it's what you're going through or what you could be experiencing.
Wow, yeah, I love that. That is a great closing message. Um, you know, for the listeners, this is the first time Vernon and I have met one another and
Mm-hmm.
communicated. We had a great conversation prior to the podcast before I even hit record. And wow, you know, you can find people in life that you resonate. And we talked about the fact, I honestly believe, you know, things happen for you, not to you. And I believe God blessed me with the opportunity and the connection of such an amazing individual. And I don't throw compliments, just so you know, Vernon, lightly. When I say things, I say what I mean. I don't believe in fluff. I believe in
I believe you.
honesty and being straightforward. And I really appreciate you. I appreciate everything that you've gone through, your struggle, your climb, and the fact that you continue to climb. And I believe this is going to be such a valuable resource for people to listen to this podcast, listen to it again. I always encourage people, you know what, if you can, I know a lot of people listen, watch, because even our mannerisms and our communication, our smiles, and you know, because I post up this on YouTube, on my YouTube podcast channel, and I suggest people, you know, watch it if you can. Listening's okay, but if you're going to listen, maybe try not to do it in your vehicle the second time, and take notes. Take notes and reach out to Vernon. Reach out to me. We are people that care and love, right? We won't take no garbage from people, right? We have a threshold where we're going to push back, but we will listen, and I will mentor anybody as long as they don't ever make it personal to me, right? That they'll listen to what I say. not necessarily always take the advice, but that there's open communication or we can build that relationship. I don't know what time frame it is that Vernon or myself can possibly help you through your struggles, your trials, your tribulations, but just know that there's people out there that believe in you, that there's people out there that believe that you're worthy of, a better life if you're suffering. And if you're living a great life already and you're listening to this, hopefully there was still some actionable nuggets of information that you got from it. And if it was just pure entertainment for you, that's great too, right?
Dwight, do you mind if I tell them about a happiness challenge?
Sure, go ahead. Yes, go for it.
Like when we were talking, and earlier I was thinking, I was like, this could be a good time. It's free. It's free. This is something I think would be a great.
Well, I actually had it as one of the questions, but go ahead. Talk about it. Yeah.
Well,
I just didn't think you would have the time, but go ahead.
I'll just make this a quick 30 seconds. It's
sure.
A 30-day happiness challenge. And this is something I created, something that I thought be just helpful. So people, if they're curious and not sure where to get started, you can self-start, right? And you follow along. I try to keep the PDF. I don't like yourself. And, first I need to say, before I get ahead of myself, thank you for those words. And I can get that you're not a person who just says things. I'm the same way. If I say something and give you a compliment, like it means a lot, because when we hit it off, I'm like, this dude's a great guy. I know we're going to have another conversation. So thank you for beating me to it. But, the 30-day happiness challenge, I don't put any fluff in it. It gets right to the point, but it's a way for you to track. It's a way for you to see who you can be in just 30 days. And I say just 30 days because 30 days will fly by in no time. It's already the middle, almost, the first third of December has already gone by now. But you can, and I try to keep it again simple, Linktree/What's Your Happy. All you got to do is click 30-day happiness challenge and they can get that right to you.
Yeah, that was my next thing I was going to say. Our time is almost up. Please tell the listeners that what's the best way to reach you. Well, you just give one of them. What would be the next best way to reach out to Vernon?
Vernon at whatsyourhappi.com. That's going to be my email, and it's happy with an I. And before anyone asks, why an I? Because you matter. But
that's awesome. That's awesome.
No, but I'm serious. I love people. I really do.
Me too. And I'll make sure that all the information gets put into the show notes. And for those listening or watching, you can access the show notes at giveaheck.com. In the podcast portal, you'll see where the little bio will be of Vernon, and as well as how to reach out and connect to him. And feel free to send other information to me that you would like to be put into the show notes that you think would be, crucial to ensuring that people can reach out to you, because sometimes people are nervous and they're scared. Mm-hmm. And for any of you that are listening and are watching, if you're nervous, I don't mind you reaching out to me if there's somebody that knows me, and I'll make the connection for you. I will be that conduit to ensure that you can reach out and have somebody as amazing as Vernon help you level up and lift your life and learn how to live it on purpose and not by accident. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Vernon. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.